Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 9 of the Beach Boys podcast. We are doing part 2 of our Brian Wilson solo discography deep dive. We've got Nate and Brandon joining us again. Glad to have you guys.
Hello.
Glad to be back.
And
Yep.
we left off on Brian Wilson Presents Smile last time. So we're starting out with What I Really Want for Christmas. And we're, November's right around the corner. So this album will be coming out along with the Beach Boys Christmas album fairly soon. So it's kind of appropriate that we start with that one. And then we're going to go all the way up to No Peer Pressure. So any opening thoughts from you guys on What I Really Want for Christmas from 2005?
Well,
It's a good way to sum up the album.
yeah. It's well made. It's well produced.
Mhm.
Brian sounds good. The band did a good job. It's what Getting In Over My Head should have sounded like, really. And I think that I wish it had more new originals on it, because the few that are on there, the title track and Christmassy especially, are really good. So I wish there was more of that and less just
Retreads.
Beach Boys covers and
Mhm.
but again, even they're well done, like Little Saint Nick and stuff. And what's the other one on this? Is
Man
Santa's
with All the
Beard on it?
Toys.
Man with All the Toys. Yeah, they definitely, I think, are improvements on the originals, actually, because they just have more oomph to them. That's always a problem I've had with the Christmas album. The backing tracks, they just don't. They just sound so low energy and like there's not much going on. So I like that. But
I'd say it's hard to beat the charm of the original Little Saint Nick. It's just something about the way the vocals and the arrangement come together that makes it so nostalgic. But I do agree with you that Man with All the Toys, that version is an improvement. Um, Part of me misses Mike's lead, but I think it's so much of what's missing from the original is made up for in this version. With the drums are so good, really great drumming on that one.
Do you think the difference in the production and what you're referring to is more a product of the times that they were made in, as opposed to like the quality of the production itself?
I think it's just having Brian's band. Honestly, I think that's just what makes them sound as good as they do.
Because I feel like what you're talking about, like production wise, I don't feel like that's something that's exclusive to the Christmas album. Like I kind of what you were saying about it, I kind of feel that way about a lot of the early stuff. If I was going to compare it to like an album like What I Really Want for Christmas, and like the difference within like just the sound of the band all overall.
Yeah, I think a lot of like like in talking about the early days and how the backing tracks would kind of sound limp. I think part of that was due to the engineering like limitations of the time, and how like the drum kit would be recorded with a single overhead microphone, maybe two, whereas nowadays like each drum is individually mic'd and there's a lot more control over the balance of each instrument. So I think that's part of the was just now everything can be captured more directly. Whereas in the 60s, it was sort of like the sound of a band playing as a whole is what they were capturing. And Brian was also pretty infamous in the early 60s for telling Dennis to like cool it and slow down and play quietly in the studio. And but I totally think the Beach Boys would have benefited from kind of playing a lot of their early stuff in the studio, how they played it live.
Yeah,
I think live they had faster tempos, louder drums, and it definitely benefits the rock songs. And I see what you mean with the tracks being kind of limp, but I think there is a good I love the bass sound on the first half of the album when Al is playing. That like sharp picked Fender bass sound is really cool.
Well, I think Christmas album's problem is just that it was a rush job because they were just trying to. It was just like Capitol wants us to make another album for for the Christmas season. We've just got to rush it out, kind of thing. Because you listen to stuff off Surfer Girl, and like listen to Our Car Club. Like that's like a full on like Wrecking Crew like backing track that's got horns and it's full and it's so they've done that kind of full big stuff before, so this just seems like they just kind of passed it off without much thought, honestly. But
I'm curious, are you listening to the mono or the stereo mix?
it's a good question. I'm just clicking on the thing and listening to. I'm not even probably that's a good question. Maybe stereo.
I think the stereo mix sounds so limp and so dull to me, but the mono mix sounds a lot fatter and more in your face. But back to the Brian Wilson Christmas album.
Yeah.
No, it's relevant though. I mean, I think they're fair comparisons
yeah.
because they're the two Christmas albums that we get from Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. So I think it's typical that people are going to compare them.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's really disappointing to follow up Smile with a Christmas album. Like it's just such a after doing that, because obviously Getting In Over My Head not many people liked, and then you got Smile and people are like, oh wow, Brian's kind of like done this amazing thing, look at this, and then he just releases like a Christmas album and it's kind of like, oh well, all this momentum was built up with Smile and it just kind of drops off with a Christmas album, and it's like that's kind of disappointing. But
personally, I get a lot more enjoyment out of Mike's Christmas album from 2018 than this album.
We got to do an episode of Mike Love's solo discography. I was thinking about that earlier today. I need that experience in my life. Just going through his albums.
Trip.
Yeah, I want that strange experience.
I think for me personally, Mike's stuff would by far be the most interesting and enjoyable to talk about. I think, honestly, because it's just crazy stuff.
Yeah, I could definitely imagine that.
Yeah.
I think what you said though is spot on though about if there had been more originals, it could have really enhanced the album, because I do agree that the couple that were on there are my favorite tracks on the album. And I don't really have. I mean, I guess having a couple of remakes of songs from the Christmas album with like that different band and instrumentation is a cool thing. But I would much prefer just like some more originals and maybe some other Christmas songs that he didn't do on the Beach Boys one, and kind of pace it similar to like the Christmas album. Maybe have like 5 originals, 5 Christmas songs or something like that,
Yeah.
How many originals are there on this one?
2.
That's it? That is just the 2?
Just 2.
Yeah, I think breaking it down that way is a winning formula. That's how, like with Mike's Christmas album, it was kind of along that lines exactly, with the A side, so to speak, being originals and the B side being traditionals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, see, that's the problem that I have with Brian's solo career in general. That like half of it is just covers and old material just being redone, and it's like, well, I don't really want that from Brian. Like doing it once in a blue moon is fine, but when that's half the guy's work, it's like, well, that's not what I'm listening for.
Yeah, that's what I was saying to Nate before you got on here. I said this is an interesting 5 albums to cover because it's 3 tribute albums and then 2 original albums. And so it seems like what you're talking about is more a product of the middle to later part of his career, because early on it was pretty much all original, right?
Well,
yeah, for the most part.
I mean,
and then Orange Great Art is where it,
but even that, I mean, that's not covers, that's just a collaboration,
Yeah, right.
And I mean, and to be fair, I would much rather, if Brian is going to collaborate with somebody, I would much rather have it be Van Dyke Parks than like the people on No Peer Pressure. I think Van Dyke Parks is at least more true to some of Brian's, capabilities and tendencies musically. All right, I think that covers that one, right? Or go ahead.
The covers aspect of this like block of Brian's solo career kept me away for a few years, just for that reasoning, like, oh, like, I listen to Brian because of his songs that he writes. Why would I, want to listen to the covers? Um, but man, I feel like Brian can make songs that he didn't even write sound like stuff that he wrote. And just hearing those great Disney and Gershwin songs with the Brian treatment, I love it. And I I'm happy to live in a world where he did both of those albums.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd rather have it than not have it for sure. I mean, even
Yeah.
if they're not my favorites, there's great moments on every one of them, and we're gonna cover both of those, so it's a perfect episode to talk about that
Sure
stuff.
are.
So the next one we're gonna have 3 years later, 2008. We have that lucky old son,
Yes.
which I'm gonna say this is my favorite of Brian's solo albums. I know we have a little disagreement with that,
Yes.
but me personally, I think this is the album where it just seems like everything is running very smoothly. I've watched some behind the scenes videos of Brian making this album, and it seems like he's genuinely like really enjoying the process, and he's really active in the studio, and it's just nice to kind of see that spark of life in him. And some of my favorite original songs of Brian's solo career, and I just like the pacing of the album, some of the spoken word kind of songs in between. There's a handful of songs that I think are kind of corny and I'm not crazy about, but overall, I probably really like maybe 80% of this album, I would say.
I I totally love it from start to finish. Even with like some corny moments, like with the spoken word stuff, a lot of people give that a hard time. But just hearing Brian deliver those like weird alliterations and hard to pronounce words
Yeah.
in
Mm-hmm.
his sort of slurred, jolly voice, it
It's
just
charming.
cracks me
Yeah,
up.
it's
Yeah,
very Brian, you know.
Yeah.
yeah,
Hucksters, hustlers, and hawkers.
Yeah.
yeah. And I think the arrangements are top notch, just as good as anything he had done previously, and everything that he's known for, like the unorthodox instruments being combined, like synthesizers and harmonicas and pianos, and I think to me, Midnight's Another Day and Good Kind of Love, um, more specifically, Midnight's Another Day. I never like I that could easily be like the best song I've ever heard. Um,
Wow.
tied with
Boy.
some of
It's beautiful.
tied with like some of his other songs in that league, like Surfs Up and God Only Knows. It's just so I think it's definitely on that level of
It's a compliment.
his compositions.
Yeah, I think it's a powerful song.
Now here's where I put a damper on everyone's.
It's good though. It's good, and that's what we're here
No,
for.
but I mean, I actually have it sitting right here.
Nice.
Oh, I didn't even have it on
Coincidentally,
CD.
but yeah. So look, I think it's a good album. I think, I mean, I mean, Brian sounds pretty damn good on it. He sounds energized. He sounds really into it. I love his vocal on "Going Home." He's doing the growly kind of "I'm going home," and it's just like, yes, Brian. That's what I like to hear, and the synth and the shortening bread kind of feel, and it's just, yeah, I love it. But and I think that and "Live Let Live" are probably the standout songs for me. I think "Live Let Live" is fantastic. As a whole, it doesn't 100% do it for me. There's a few things that are more kind of like "Oxygen to the Brain." I'm not huge on, and there's a couple little bits and pieces, but I do think it's really is a good solid album. I just wish I liked it just a little bit more than I do.
I would love to hear these songs if they were recorded in the 60s. And they're played and arranged very much like how Brian would have done things in the 60s.
That sounds like it, yeah.
Like instrumentally and harmonically, but it sounds very like recent, like modern, and that sort of goes back to what I was saying about how the sound is captured, and it sounds very like pristine HD, so to speak. Whereas I would have loved to hear some of these songs with like just the Wrecking Crew playing into the echo chamber and that big 60s wall of sound.
Yeah, well, I do kind of, this is gonna sound a little extreme, but I do kind of feel like this album is like the pet sounds of Brian's solo career, in a sense of like what you
Yeah.
were just saying with the instrumentation and stuff like that, and the kind of stuff he was experimenting with. Obviously, I think Pet Sounds is way better of an album, but I think you can make a comparison to that in terms of maybe that's what I like about this album. Kind of what I was saying at the beginning, how it just kind of really feels like Brian's in the driver's seat and he's, taking chances and experimenting with a lot of different things. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, so I think you could make that comparison to an extent,
And despite the controversies he's found himself in, I think Scott Bennett is definitely one of Brian's best collaborators in recent years. Just given that like Southern California and Midnight's Another Day, and they're very autobiographical, and it feels like Brian singing about his life to you. So for Bennett to channel Brian's feelings like that, put it in ink is very cool. It's a bummer they
Also,
won't get to collaborate again, but probably for the
yeah,
better.
yeah. Also, California Roll, I kind of like because it's a bit different for Brian. It's kind of got that old music hall vaudeville kind of
Kind of McCartney-ish
1920s.
almost.
Yeah, almost like something Paul would do, like with I don't
When I'm
know,
64.
honey pie or when I'm 64. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
got that kind of vibe, and I like that kind of
What I
music.
like
So yeah.
about um, that Lucky Old Son, and we get a hell of a lot more of it on Peer Pressure, probably too much. But I do like that on Lucky Old Son, there's some other voices, and it's not just Brian on lead the whole time,
Mm,
Mhm.
which is great. And Brian's a great singer.
mm,
Um, it's obviously not the end of the world to have just Brian, but I think Brian excels when he gets to pick and choose the different vocal timbres for different parts.
mm,
And so it's cool to have like some Foskett moments on lead, some Scott Bennett moments on lead, just sort of to mix it up and refresh your ears
Mm.
a little bit.
mm. Again, I've
Yeah.
said this before, but I think that Lucky Old Son, I think, is what the Beach Boys reunion album should have been. I think
Mm,
I think most people would have preferred that. Like, I can imagine Mike singing Mexican Girl, like,
yeah,
that just totally fits, I think. And yeah, I think that would have been appreciated and liked a lot more than That's Why God Made the Radio. But yeah.
Yeah, Forever She'll Be My Surfer Girl would be like a perfect sort
Mm,
of
Beach Boys song, yeah.
yeah.
yeah, retro throwback Beach Boys sound. That's one of my favorites on the album. I love that song. And then what the what's it called? Southern California. So beautiful.
Yeah,
Mm,
so gorgeous.
Yeah, so heartfelt. Yeah, singing about his brothers. It's just
Yeah, it gets me
uh,
choked up when I
yeah,
hear that
super
line.
deep. Yeah, any
yeah, it's
sort of
lovely.
songs where he's just reflecting on his childhood. I mean, it's super intense.
Yeah, and
Um,
we can all relate to that feeling.
yeah, absolutely. All right, we ready for the next one?
Yes.
Switching it up with another tribute album. Brian Wilson reimagines Gershwin from
Now,
2010.
now we're talking. No,
Yeah, this is so
yeah,
good.
this is killer. Now this is the one covers album that I'm really happy does exist, because this is I'm gonna say it's excellent. It's a really really good album. I actually now this is probably a little controversial, but I think I actually slightly prefer it to that Lucky Old Son. Honestly, I think it's so
I
good.
believe it.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
to me, this is definitely an album that I would show someone if I wanted to show them why Brian Wilson is like the one of the, if not the best producers of all time. Just
Mm,
uh, everything sounds so lush, and if you know the Gershwin versions or like Broadway versions, or you'd never expect some of the weird things he pulls out of his hat, and how he turns some into rock and roll songs, and how really like a modern harmonies too. I mean, I guess Gershwin is pretty advanced, but the fact that Brian can take like Gershwin of all things and still make it his own
Mm.
is so cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
Because
vocally,
it sounds thoroughly like a Brian Wilson album.
definitely. But yeah, vocally, Brian just knocks it out of the park on this. Probably like, probably his best vocals of his solo career. Honestly, on this album, I'd say
Hell yeah.
he sounds great.
I'm honestly surprised that an album like this didn't come out until 2010 because obviously Brian Wilson has always had a huge jazz influence ever since, the early 60s. And for him to not really do any sort of jazz influenced album until 2010 is kind of surprising to me. But I think that's one of the things that makes this album so good. Like Brandon, when you're saying that this is like a cover album that you really like, I think it's because just jazz in general is such a true element to Brian's sort of musical upbringing and stuff that he borrows from in his writing style. And another thing that I didn't know about this album that's really cool is there's actually 2 tracks on here. What is it? Nothing But Love and then The Like and I Love You. Both of those songs were actually unfinished, and Brian and Scott Bennett completed them, which I thought was really cool. And that's actually The Like and I Love You is one of my favorite songs on the album.
The Like and I Love You is probably my favorite song on the album. Honestly, it's
Those
great. It's
Clear
really
Nights,
good.
I think, are so gorgeous.
I love the intro too. That just those intro harmonies so good. Yeah. I mean, he just takes like a little snippet of a part from Rhapsody in Blue. I mean, Rhapsody in Blue is like a really long, piece, and he just takes this little snippet and he uses that for the intro and the outro. And I think that's like the perfect little snippet of the song to take. It's just so beautiful, great melody, and the way he harmonizes it with underneath in the vocal parts is just a perfect way to start and conclude the album.
And Paul von Mertens, Brian's like sax player, did all of these arrangements, so he knocked it out of the park. And it's sort of the setup where he would write all the charts out and prepare everything for the musicians, and then they'd play, and Brian, being the producer, would then do his thing and say, play it this way, play it up the octave, blah blah blah. So it doesn't necessarily take away from Brian's like contributions per se, but Mertens did like the transitions and how everything like links together.
That's the guy that's like the secret weapon, right? Is that what they call him?
Yeah, exactly. Or is that Darian? I can't remember what they call that.
That's Darian.
No, there's another guy that it's not Darian, because last time I saw him, Darian wasn't in the group. There was another guy who kind of played like every instrument, and they called him the secret weapon. I thought it was Paul von Mertens. Or Probin Gregory. Yeah. That's the bald guy.
Right? Yeah.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he plays and I think he learned. I think it was trombone not trombone. It was some brass instrument specifically to play with on Wake the World. I think it was tuba maybe.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Imagine like working with Brian Wilson and he just asks you if you can learn an instrument. I'm sure Brian didn't ask him. Maybe he probably took it upon himself. If he's, that talented and that good of a multi-instrumentalist, he's probably a pretty ambitious guy, I would imagine. But the idea of like playing with like a big name person like Brian Wilson and then actually like learning an instrument to play with him.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, that's quite the task.
So now we're on to Disney.
Yeah.
Yep.
2011, In the Key of Disney.
I love this album. Some of the choices are a little strange, given that they were like relatively recent Disney movies. Would have made more sense for the selections to all be of like Brian's era when he was like a kid.
Right.
But I think I'd actually say that these might be the strongest vocals of his solo career.
Yeah, you could argue that either Gershwin or this,
I think it's cool how certain songs have like an homage to. I realized the other day that and Brandon, maybe you pointed this out to me now that I think about it, but that Kiss the Girl on Disney is kind of like borrowing the arrangement from Mexican Girl on Lucky Old Son.
Oh, I don't think I said that, but
Yeah.
I didn't even notice. But I'll take it.
Yeah.
That is a
Yeah, I
really good
think
point. Yeah, go ahead.
I love the how he brings in the Be My Baby beat on Kiss the Girl. And When You Wish Upon a Star is, I wish I would have thought of it in our top 10. Actually, maybe it wouldn't be in my top 10, but in the general Beach Boys catalog, it's definitely up there. It's just the vocals are so gorgeous and locked in.
Yeah. And like what you say about not having as many Disney songs from Brian's era, I completely agree. And a song like When You Wish Upon a Star, that's like a prime example of a song that's perfect for that album. And if you could have gotten more songs
Yeah,
from that era, because, you know, I grew up in the 90s, so I watched a ton of Disney movies when I was a kid, and I didn't recognize like barely any of the songs on this album. I knew a couple, but I wonder if that
Yeah,
was more of just a marketing thing. Like, were they trying to appeal more to like a modern, just
true.
general audience? Do you think?
even I didn't know quite a few of them, and
Yeah,
I think that not having a single song from Aladdin hurts a bit. That
I
that
know
that
they
would have
should
been
have done
nice
that.
to have something. Like imagine Brian singing like a friend like, what is it, a friend like me or something?
Yeah,
What's that one? Yeah, that would have been
What
interesting.
are what are the movies that let's look that up right now? What are the movies that this
I think
covers?
Lion King.
when you
Toy
go
Story. I
on,
know Toy Story 3 and then Toy Story 1, right?
Is there's
I
not
We
think
something
Belong
from Toy
Together
Story
is
3,
from
is
Toy
there?
Story 3.
Oh, is it?
yeah, so it
Yeah.
goes Toy Story, The
Pocahontas, I think
Jungle
that's what it's
Book,
called.
Dumbo, Little Mermaid, Pocahontas, Lion King, Toy Story 3. That's such a weird choice. 3.
Yeah.
Lion King, Mary Poppins, and then Disneyland theme park stuff, and then When You Wish Upon a Star.
That's weird. That so those are actually majority older Disney movies, but even
Yeah,
still, I don't recognize most of. I feel like there's more recognizable Disney songs that they could have picked.
Hmm.
I almost, in a way, like not knowing the songs
Got
before
nothing to
hearing the
compare it
album
to.
because yeah, with the Gershwin, most of the songs on the Gershwin album, um, most of the songs on this album, as well as most of the Beach Boy related covers in general, I'm introduced through their versions,
Hmm.
and 9 times out of 10, I'll like the Beach Boys versions better than whatever they're covering.
That's a good point
Hmm.
because I love that song, "We Belong Together." That's one of my favorites on here, and I've never heard the original, and I don't really have any desire to, just because I like Brian's version so much.
Yeah, when his version of "When You Wish Upon a Star" is so perfect to me that I couldn't even go back to the original.
Well, song
And
like that,
even
yeah.
"You've Got a Friend in Me," the way he kind of does some real Brian shtick on the middle eight when he's like, some of the folks might, but he kind of like jumbles the words and like groups them into little things that he just spits out. How he's done the last few years, and it makes me laugh. I
I
like
love
that
that
stuff.
little vocal thing in between the ooh, that
Yeah,
little thing. It's just like such a like a simple little just vocal line, but it's just like makes the song so much better, in my opinion. And When You Wish Upon a Star, a song like that just lends itself perfectly to the like those Beach Boy style vocal harmonies. You know, like a melody like that is just you can just eat it right up with those vocal harmonies, you know, and
yeah.
that's exactly what he did.
Is When You Wish Upon a Star the last song on the album?
On most versions, and then if you got an Amazon CD, I think it came apparently with 2 extra tracks, which I've never
See,
heard.
see
Either
how
one from
fitting.
Cinderella and one from Lady and the Tramp.
Oh, there you go. See
Yeah,
how
there's a lot of that.
how fitting would that be if like he didn't make No Peer Pressure, and then the last song
I
on Brian's
know.
last album was When You Wish Upon a Star? That would have been like
So
perfect way
full
to end it.
circle.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into the last song on No Peer Pressure as well. I had some questions about
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
meaning behind that one.
It's kind of interesting how I think Brian has perfected the art of the closing track on the album, Caroline No, in the back of my mind, and then even Southern California, and even
Summer
this, When
Means
You
New
Wish Upon a
Love.
Star.
Rio Grande.
Yeah,
Or I'm sorry, not
just
Summer Means New Love. And Your Dream Comes
yeah,
True. Right.
yeah. Just
That's the
figuring
closer,
out
right?
the
On Summer
best way to
Days.
wrap up.
Yeah.
Let me check.
Yeah, it is.
I think it is. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, perfect closer.
Hmm.
All right, you want to go to No Peer Pressure?
If we have to, yes.
From 5
Sure.
years ago. I don't think it's that
Damn.
bad. I think it's got some hot and cold moments.
Yeah.
For yeah, go ahead.
I'd probably say it has some of my favorite moments of Brian's solo career and some of my least favorite moments
I completely
sandwiched
agree.
all together.
I think I think it's quite easily Brian's worst album. Yeah, I don't like how it sounds. Everything just sounds like Imagine. It's got the same problem as Imagination. A lot of it just sounds too glossy and just kind of cheap and plasticky. Like it's not like a real organic kind of sounding thing. And the auto tune is too much. And Brian's doesn't even feel like a Brian album because the guest vocalists just there's way too much. There's way too many of them, and they just overshadow Brian. And the songs, most of the songs, don't sound like they were written by him. And yeah.
Well, I think that for me, like when I listen to this album, I really like how it starts. I think it's got a really beautiful opening, and then I'm kind of anticipating what's coming next, and then the second track comes on, and it's like
Runaway
this like
Dancer.
four on the floor, like almost like a techno beat with like crazy auto tune and like this alto saxophone. I'm just
That
like,
was
what's going on? It's
such
all
a
over.
weird sequencing.
It's a real, yeah, like, so I like the way it
A bit
opens, and then
jarring.
there's a couple of weird tracks, but then sprinkled in with those weird tracks are some tracks that I really like. And most of the tracks that I do like, um, I think just the main thing is that it has features that lend themselves better to Brian Wilson. Like, I think if he had just in general more features with Al Jardine, David Marks, and Blondie Chaplin, I think the music would have taken a different turn, because I think, if you're getting people like Casey Musgraves and all these random like pop artists on here, it's going to really dictate a lot of how the music goes. But, I'd still think it has some great songs. One of my all-time favorite Brian solo songs is One Kind of Love. And I think that's like a perfect like redemption song when you think of Brian and everything that he's gone through, and then writing this song about his wife getting him out of the situation he was in, and kind of just what's the word I'm looking for, kind of just concluding that period of Brian's life, and like his way of like saying that he's in a better place now, and that there has been light at the end of the tunnel. So I really like that element of it. And I want to get into the last song and what it means, but before we do that, tell me your thoughts, Brandon.
On what just in general, just
I guess, yeah, in general.
on,
I guess you already kind of said, yeah. I mean, if do you have anything you want to add?
I just think that even like with the guest vocalists and the collaborations and stuff, I don't want to. This comes off kind of mean, but I don't really think they're worthy of being on an album with Brian. A lot of them, like I think a lot of them are just kind of like C-list kind of singers and stuff like that. Like they're not the kind of people you'd expect. You'd expect Brian Wilson to be able to get kind of people of a higher standing,
the
to
top
be
tier
on an album with him, and I find that they don't really add anything musically that interesting. I mean, it's mostly just generic top 40 radio pop kind of stuff that you'd hear from anyone. It doesn't make you like listening to what is it? I guess you had to be there, or
Saturday
the
Night.
yeah, Saturday Night, that doesn't make me think, ooh, this is a Brian song, you know, like it
Of
doesn't.
course, yeah.
They're not even good collaborations in that case, because it just feels like the guest's song instead of Brian. So that's pretty disappointing.
Well, how do you feel about
Saturday
the
Night sounds really
collaborations?
like a Brian song to me.
Uh,
Not the latter, but I can totally see Saturday Night from like the Sunflower-ish era.
but it is kind of upbeat and cheery and stuff. So I can, yeah,
Well,
I
Brandon,
guess
how do
I
you
can do
feel
that.
about the collaborations, like the songs with Al and David Marks and
Well,
Blondie?
I think that's the best part of the album.
Mm.
Specifically having Al. I mean, having Blondie is cool, and David's David, but having Al specifically, I think is cool, and it's so weird to me that Al has more vocals on here than he does on That's Why God Made the Radio, which is just
Oh,
makes
that's a
no
Wow.
good point.
sense. Like, because Al only has shared lead with Brian on one song on That's Why God Made the Radio, and then he has like a few lines on the title track and stuff, but only one lead, and he has a couple leads, I think,
And
on
he still
here, so
sounds
it's
great.
weird. And Al sounds great, and those songs, those songs, I'm trying to think what they're called, like that Al and stuff are on, like
The right
um,
time
yeah, the right time and stuff like that. They
on the
feel,
island, maybe, or no?
oh no, on the islands, see, on
Or
the island, I think is probably the best of the collaborations. I think that one
I love
is
that
fun
song.
I like
and I
is Don't Worry a collaboration?
no.
I think so. Oh no.
No, I don't think it is. That's yeah, that's like a deluxe track.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah,
deluxe tracks that aren't, because the
yeah,
original I think is only 13 tracks, but
13
another one of the
tracks.
deluxe ones that I love is Somewhere Quiet, which I like. I
Yeah,
actually like that one even more than the original.
me too.
I wish they sung over the original. Like when I hear it like that, it just sounds so good, especially with the B section, whatever. I wanna take you somewhere quiet, like with those vocal harmonies underneath it. Oh, it just sounds so beautiful.
But
Now
yeah,
when I
that
listen
yeah.
to the Beach Boys version, I sing the Brian's words
Yeah,
just by
late
accident.
at night. Yeah, I
It,
can't help it.
But yeah,
Such a
I
good
do.
melody.
It is. I do think, yeah, I do think that the stuff with Al and Blondie and stuff, they do feel more like Brian songs than the collaborations do. Like they're better for it.
I'm
Another
feeling
complaint that I
sad
have.
is a
Yeah,
straight up Brian song.
Yeah,
I'm feeling sad should have been on the regular album. I don't know why it
that's
wasn't.
like the modern day In My Room.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
Yeah,
feeling sad, and One Kind of Love are definitely the most Brian kind of songs in my
yeah. One
opinion.
Kind of Love is so good.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you were bringing up the last song a little.
Yes.
Uh,
Oh
I
yeah, let's
think
get into that.
I think it goes along with the theme of like his last song on the album usually being like some kind of centerpiece or conclusion or something big and noteworthy. And I think around the time of 2014 and 2015, with his movie coming out and with the Beach Boys, with him leaving the Beach Boys again, I think he was probably considering this being his final bow. And he had
Mm.
said so in a few interviews at the time that he was thinking about this being his last tour and stuff. So it probably was very like fitting and convenient for this like last song concept that he probably had to be the last song on the album. But I think at some point he said that it wasn't meant to mean that it was his last song, but that it was more just a concept for a song. But
Mm-hmm.
I think
Hmm.
if it ends up becoming the final song on his final album, um, I'm not disappointed with it. I love that song. I don't listen to it very often because it's very like sad and it makes me think about like his mortality and
Right.
what that's all gonna be like. So
Yeah, I'm
I
not
only
ready for
listen to
that.
it like a couple times a year, but when I do, it definitely makes me reflect.
All right, this is a weird thing about this song too. Did you know that originally it was supposed to have Lana Del Rey on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have
Imagine
been
how much
interesting.
that would have. I mean, I think thank God it didn't. You know, because
Yeah,
I don't this like whole like last song idea and like it being like a very fitting thing to put at the end of the album. I feel like if Lana Del Rey was on it, that would have taken a lot away from it, at least for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
It would
for
have made it
me,
more less about Brian. You know, it should be all about Brian.
yeah. When it with like Brian singing those words, like there's never enough time for the one that you love. Like, man, if I play that song, it's guaranteed that I'm gonna be sobbing. Um, but if it's just like if it was just someone else singing that, it yeah, it'd be a very forgettable song. But
Yeah, yeah.
with
So much of
Brian
it has to
singing
do
it
with who's yeah.
in the context of like the reunion falling apart and different things in his life, it it's pretty heavy.
All right, now this is where I'm going to disagree.
Hot take.
Well, no, I don't think what I'm going to say is too much of a hot take because I've seen other people say similar kind of things about a hot take on here. Yes, between us, yeah. But I think having, you know, I mean, look, this is, you know, I'm 99.9% sure this is going to be the last Brian album.
Yeah, I was going to ask
But
that.
yeah, but having the, you know, the last song on the last Brian album be called the last song is just such a cheesy, on the nose, hackneyed kind of thing. I think it's just kind of like, really, like you're gonna be that obvious kind of thing, you know. And I think as ballads go, I think it's one of Brian's most forgettable, and honestly one of his worst ballads he's ever done. Like I don't find it memorable at all. I think the la 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 la. I think the la las are incredibly cheesy. Um, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it at all. I can see why it would have an emotional impact, but I think taking that away, you know, from it being his last song and taking all that away just as a song itself, I don't think it's anything that good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think stripping away all of the emotional context, it's sort of like a half-finished song. Um, but like given with that, it's easier said than done to strip away context with
Mm,
music, like emotionally.
Mm.
Some and with all that, I think it does what it set out to do. But it
Yeah,
is kind of a
yeah.
corny idea. I know what you
yeah.
mean.
I would agree that. Yeah, I agree as well. I think given that though, I still think it's good. I don't think it's. I think it could have been much worse. You know, I think we could have had much worse options for the final song. But I think if you did strip away the emotional thing from it, obviously, like it's not as good of a song without the significance of it because it's not like one of those Brian ballads that I've listened to over and over and over again,
Mm,
like a Southern California or Midnight's
Mhm.
Another Day or something like that. You know.
mm,
There is with the la la la's and the like the cymbal swell and like the how like loud it gets. There is like a it's like a bit of a weight off your shoulders, like a catharsis kind of feeling. Like he had finally like in that moment when you're listening to it, it's like he started here and now he's here
mm,
and you get to watch this like 50 plus year evolution and progression.
mm.
Um, so yeah, but that's all again just the context.
It's just such a weird album for him to like finish his career on.
Mm.
Like it's just, I mean, yeah, I think looking at the grand scheme of things, it is kind of a disappointing way to kind of cap things off overall. Especially considering, yeah, like a lot. There's like Brian doesn't even really have that much of a presence on quite a few, quite a decent sized portion of the album.
Mm-hmm.
So to have that be his last album is kind of like, you know.
Do you feel like
I
if they left off at In the Key of Disney, do you think that would have been better or worse?
Well, I think in I don't know, but maybe around the same because in the Key of Disney, it's like also like ending your career with a covers album is also kind of like,
Right.
you know. But having said that, I think if he ended with Gershwin, even though that's obviously a covers album as well, I think that would have been more fitting. One because, well, just personally, I think it's better, but also because I mean Gershwin was Brian, you know, was Brian's like main inspiration to become a songwriter and a musician. So ending his whole career doing songs about like doing the person that inspired him to do music songs, I think that's really fitting, you know.
Mm-hmm.
To play devil's advocate, I think no peer pressure is is actually a somewhat good place to end on, because it's basically, in my mind, like Brian doing what he enjoys doing, and it's just making happy, comfortable music to please himself and those around him. Just like something to bring people together, sort of like if you think about the Wilson family all singing in the garage around the organ and what that would mean. Sort of just a different version of that. Like maybe it's not as ambitious as That Lucky Old Son or Smile, but it's, the guy's 75 or 73 or whatever, that age, and whatever songs he wants to pull out and have different people sing them. If it's just some happy music and brings a smile to your face, I think that's a pretty remarkable place to finish, given the roller coaster ride he's been on. And at least this album isn't like on some Landy forcing him to scream
That's true.
Shit,
Yeah.
But I think it's also funny that the album's called, for an album called No Peer Pressure, I feel like Brian did have a bit of peer pressure in the making of it, because I couldn't imagine Brian going, ooh, I want to work with Casey Musgraves, and I want to work with, Nate from Fun, and like those seem like just like maybe his wife, or like, Joe Thomas, or like some people just like kind of forcing them onto him because, Brian, these people are popular and they're young and they're hip. Let's get you down with the kiddies, and that kind of thing. And it's like, I don't know, it seems kind of fake to me, but
I think the guests, it's easy to say that they're like C-list singers and stuff, like looking back at it, but in 15 is when it was. Fun was like basically the biggest pop rock band.
Yeah, it's a different thing. Yeah,
Casey Musgraves has proven herself to be one of the most relevant country artists. I don't listen to country, but I hear her name all the time. So I think while the concept of working with like young artists is a little forced, given the music scene nowadays, I can't think of hell of a lot of people that would be like much better. I think the Zoe Deschanel one is actually a genuine collaboration because
she's
Brian
a fan.
And like a family friend.
Yeah.
I think her dad was a promoter or something that Brian had known. So she had known her since she was a little girl.
Maybe part of it is just a generational thing where because Brian's from a different generation, we have this idea in our head that people from like the newer generation, they're just like not as qualified to play with somebody like him. And I feel like you can get that in a lot of different areas, because just thinking of that in terms of myself, like I'm a big fan of Eminem, and a lot of times Eminem will be on like these rap songs with like all these newer guys who, like, in my opinion, they just can't keep up with him at all. And I'm just like, why is he doing these songs with them? But I think there's always probably some sound reason behind it, regardless if whether or not we necessarily like everything that's coming out of it. I feel like most of the time it's probably genuine, I would hope. I mean,
I can't quite, did most of the collaborators like write the songs?
I think in
I can't quite remember. I think Casey Musgraves did.
Yeah, I definitely know did.
Is there a documentary on the making of this album? Because I know there's one for Lucky Old Son.
Yeah, there's a behind the scenes
15-minute one on YouTube.
Yeah.
It actually looks like Cebu, I think, rewrote the lyrics to Runaway Dancer. Casey Musgraves wrote the verses for Guess You Had to Be There. And Nate from Fun probably wrote the lyrics of Saturday Night. But it looks like those are the only collaborations writing-wise. Everything else is Brian and Joe Thomas.
Yeah. Because it's funny because, I mean, looking at another album where Brian had, other kind of musicians, like, well-known musicians and stuff, I'm getting in over my head. It's like there you've got Eric Clapton, Paul McCartney, and Elton John.
I was just... Sorry, keep going.
A little bit, I think they're a tad higher of a standard than them, just a little bit.
Possible.
but yeah, maybe. But it's like none of them like wrote any of the music or
Right.
wrote anything with Brian at all, and it's like that's even worse. Like that's even more disappointing. Like why would you get these people and not have them work together properly? You know, it's like
I feel like he could have just gotten a bunch of old people that he already has collaborated with and just
mm,
create more of a kind of a genuine sounding Brian Wilson
Yeah,
collaboration
I mean,
you
album.
know, just so you can
Mo-
go,
Hal Blaine was
oh
still alive in 2015.
yeah, you know, just so you can go like, you know, with getting over my head, like, ooh, you know, you can say in the advertising or whatever, oh, look, we've got Paul McCartney and Elton John and Eric Clapton
Right.
on the album. You know, how exciting! And especially with the a friend like you, the Paul one, it's like he sings what like he sings the title and that's it. Like
Yeah.
how half-assed, like that's the bare minimum you could do. You
Right.
know, like come on.
Probably came down to like whether or not they wanted to market it more to younger people or if they wanted to market it more to like boomers, you know, because if you
Mm,
put Eric Clapton and Paul McCartney and, you know, I don't know how much of the younger generation is even going to know them, unfortunately. And it pains me to
mm,
say that.
yeah.
But obviously, I mean, for people like us, I think that would have been obviously the preferable choice.
Mm.
But I
I
don't
mean,
really know if it necessarily worked in terms of getting Brian more recognition with the younger audience because
Yeah,
I
I
still
don't
feel
know.
like I meet people all the time that don't even know who he is, and they should know who he is. You know?
Yeah.
well, I mean, getting in over my head didn't do well. I mean, it charted at like, I think it got to like 100 on the charts for like 1 week. So it didn't really, you know, do much for that. But
Mm. And who knows? I mean, maybe Brian will surprise us one of these years with an album. I'm not counting on it, but you never know. I mean, maybe he's been using his free time wisely during COVID and
Yeah,
writing
right.
songs. Who knows? I mean,
well, he does have some new songs that are going to be on that documentary, the Long
Mm.
Promised Road
when does that come
thing.
out?
That's
They
never
keep
at this
pushing
point.
it.
No, I don't know.
I feel like I've been seeing the like that documentary getting advertised for like years now.
I mean,
Really.
I can't, you know, I mean, you know, it's like with field flows, you know, you can understand why it's been having delays and stuff because there's been some infighting or, you know, whatever has been going on. The documentary not coming out is just stupid to me. As far as I know, there's no reason why it hasn't come out other than what they want to play it at a festival or something.
Yeah,
It's like, who,
they're
who cares? Just release it, you know?
they're probably waiting for it to be safe to go to the theater again.
You know, like, but it's like, who knows how long that's going to be? Just release it, like,
Yeah.
And plus,
Exactly.
viewership
on a
is like up
platform.
like across the board on everything because so many people
Yeah,
are home now
Right.
with COVID. I feel like if they released it now, people would be binging it. You
yeah,
know, I would watch it at least a couple times. I
Oh,
know.
no
yeah.
doubt.
You know.
No, I really
I'm
want to
so
see it. Yeah,
excited for it.
yeah,
I'm still trying to stay optimistic. I'm sure they're gonna release it.
Well,
yeah.
it's done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've heard.
So I mean, what would
As far
what
as I
reason
know.
would they have for not? I mean, let's say hypothetically that they never end up getting to play it at this festival. I mean, are they just not going to release it then because of that?
Well, that would be ridiculous. I
Yeah,
mean,
that
Right.
would suck.
But when you
you
say
know,
like you're trying to stay optimistic, what do you mean by like? Do you have a fear that it's never going to get released?
Yeah, and that's just because I feel like there's so much stuff in the Beach Boys world
yeah,
gets teased and then never released.
yeah. I mean, look,
Mm.
if it was anything else, you'd definitely be called
Yeah,
a massive pessimist for thinking that a finished thing with such a well-known big guy wouldn't be released. But because it's the Beach Boys, you know, fans we've got to be used to crushing disappointment.
Mm.
So yeah.
They just got to
So
keep
who
holding
knows?
out, and then you know, if anything
Mm.
gets released, that'd be a perfect thing to do an episode on. It's a great
Yeah,
I
outlet
it's
for
know.
discussing these
oh,
things.
definitely. But like it just like apparently it's just like Brian, like most of it is just Brian just driving like around California or something.
Going to the
And that just
deli,
sounds
going to
so
the
cool.
park.
Like just so
Yeah,
Getting
like
his veggie
chill and
patty.
that
Right? Doesn't
sounds
he say he
great.
gets a veggie patty from the deli every morning?
yeah.
He says either a bowl of blueberries or a veggie patty. I love that. That's how his book opens, right? He just goes through like his morning routine. And he's like,
Yeah.
years ago, it would have been, you know, like 2 egg sandwiches and a Coke and fries or something. Now it's a veggie patty or some blueberries from the deli. I just the thought of like Brian Wilson walking to a deli. Like imagine just sitting in a deli and Brian Wilson walks in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just can't. It's like that thing where you like when you're a kid, you can't picture like your teacher like existing outside of school. Like I cannot
Yeah.
picture Brian like living in the real world at all. Not saying that he's not capable. I just mean more in terms of
Yeah.
like he's such like a larger
Icon.
than life figure to me. I can't picture just like it being possible that Brian Wilson could just walk into a deli and you could see him, you know,
Yeah, I know. Waiting in line with him.
hearing him order.
Lines around the block.
Yeah. I wonder what kind of sandwich I wonder what his sandwich of choice is. Like when he doesn't have to watch his diet or anything. What do you guys think?
Like 24 ounces of steak.
Yeah, just meat.
For a
just
sandwich?
meat filled.
That's my guess.
I think he'd be like a turkey Reuben kind of guy.
Yeah.
The turkey with the coleslaw and the Russian dressing. I don't know why I think that would be his sandwich, but I have a feeling.
He's lost a lot of weight recently.
Yeah.
Actually.
Is it because of that didn't he have a surgery on his back or something?
Oh, maybe it's because of that. Yeah.
Or his knee. No, it was his knee because he was in a wheelchair at one point with like a big cast around his leg.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on Instagram there was a picture. But he said after, I forget what the surgery was, but I remember after he got it, he like did a post and he said that he was feeling a lot better, and he said he's going to be able to get back to making music. So, you know, who knows? Maybe there will be an album after all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there will be something. I think it'll most likely be a soundtrack for that movie with bits of old and new.
Yeah.
But he has been, prior to COVID, like Matt Jardine was posting that on Instagram and stuff, that he was in the studio, presumably with Brian. He was at Western. So
Brian's been very active these past couple of years.
Yeah, it's,
you know, for contemplating having No Peer Pressure be his last thing. I mean, he's been incredibly active since that time.
Right.
To the point where I see a lot of people like
Twitter.
every time Brian announces a new tour on social media, you always see a bunch of people in the comments saying that, you know, stop abusing this poor man, just let him, you know, live his life. Like I feel like a lot of people have this idea in their head that Brian's getting forced to do these things, but I don't necessarily think so. I mean, at least the times I've seen him, it seemed very genuine, and it seemed like he liked it. And I think, you know, probably here and there's probably some shows where he's a little bit out of it, and maybe that gives it a bad image. But overall, I think it seems genuine. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I think
I don't buy it that he's forced to do anything at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, the guy's got so much money that it's like, why would he have to? You know, like he doesn't have to go out and do these shows, right? Like he's got millions of dollars. But then also it's like, I can kind of see where some people are coming from, because when you think of like, he never liked touring before, like in the 60s and stuff, he couldn't stand it. So it's like, it's kind of like, why would he all of a sudden start liking it? So it's kind of like, you know, I don't know.
It does kind of seem like something that keeps him going, though, at the same time. So I wonder if he has a different outlook at this point in his life, maybe kind of just looking back on everything. And because, you know, when he didn't like touring before, I feel like the circumstances were very different than now. So maybe there's a part of him
riding
now that
in
kind
a
of just
U-Haul from state to state versus private airplane and all that.
Right. So maybe at least now, maybe he just wants to, you know, experience as much music and as much love from his fans as he can while he still can.
Yeah,
because I mean, that's one thing you can't deny about Beach Boys and Brian Wilson's fans. I mean, the love is just so deep and so genuine.
Totally.
I mean, whenever I go to a Beach Boys show, it's just like the nicest, coolest, like most kind, loving people that you'll ever see. Just amazing fan base.
Yeah, I think that the positivity of the music attracts a certain type of person that has that view of the world.
Yeah, they're all, I mean, and especially younger people, I feel like they're all people like us. Like when I went to see Brian the first time, I went by myself because the tickets were like $275. I didn't have any friends that were hardcore enough of a Beach Boys fan to go yet. So I just went by myself, and then like in the aisle behind me, there were just like two young guys around my age, and they were talking about, they were just nerding out about the type of stuff that we talk about. And I just turned around and started talking to them, and it was just like one of these conversations. I mean, there's so many
Yeah.
people like us out there.
Yeah.
And, it's like what Scott was saying in the podcast last week. How he said it's like a great time to be a fan of the Beach Boys too.
Yeah.
Like the timing is really great. And that kind of echoes what you had said to me, Nate, about how you think like it's really great that we're doing this podcast and putting this out in the world, especially like right now for the time that we're doing it, because it is a very exciting and very kind of like critical period to be a fan of the Beach Boys, and Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love doing
Great.
it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I think,
Great
and
stuff.
it totally blows my mind and makes me so happy to be scrolling on Facebook or like on Smiley Smile and see people who we've never even met like talking about the show and giving their takes
Yeah.
on what we said.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm just like, people are actually listening to what we say.
Yeah, right.
It's great though. I mean, there's a great community of people around there, and
If
there
we
are
keep
other
doing
Beach
this,
Boys podcasts
someday,
too, which I wasn't aware of. There's other ones as well.
Okay.
if we keep
Competition.
doing this, someday it'll say our names. It'll be like Nate, Mike, Brandon, comma Beach Boys experts.
Should
Yeah,
already
if there
say
was,
it, honestly, but
yeah, if that was something that you can use at a job interview,
yeah.
that I would get hired, on the spot at that job, with like, here's my area of expertise.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys, and thanks everybody
thank
for
you.
listening. This was an awesome episode. Great conclusion to Brian's solo discography, and hopefully we will be back within the next few episodes to cover Carl and Dennis's solo works as well. So thank you so much for listening. Thanks for doing this, guys, and I look forward to seeing you at the next episode.
Sounds good.
See ya.
Alrighty, I'll talk to you guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
All right.
Nice talk.
Yeah, you too. See you guys.
Likewise. Later.